he needs like some basic education. Oh, good job. Which is just, I'm just going to explain to him what I want him to do with his feet, and then obviously about my personal space. That's okay. We'll fix that. That's not an issue. So I'm going to explain to him what I want him to do with his feet. I'm going to ask him to put that hind right foot back. And then I'm going to ask him to cross his front right foot over. I'm going to do it just with physical pressure first, so it's like if you're on the cross ties or whatever. And I'm going to tell him I didn't want him to leave. Okay, so if I'd asked him to walk, I would have given him a cue to tell him to walk. But I want him to believe that everything I'm asking him for is as black and white as move foot there, period. You know? This way they're always looking for guidance instead of just being worried that I don't know what they want me to do, but I think I'm supposed to do this. Because that just builds their anxiety. He's got a lot of anxiety that he hides. And if I can help him understand that if I want him to do something, I am going to give him actual instructions, and maybe he'll look for guidance instead of just making assumptions. Because his assumptions probably have gotten him in a little bit of trouble. And in getting him in trouble, then now he takes, he thinks of people as not fair. And then, his opinion of people becomes a blade of grass. And if he can step on you, cross over you, knock you down, it's kind of like what he thinks that people are to him. He seems like a very nice boy who really, really wants to be a kind horse. His personal space issues are more about, I'm going to push you around before you push me around. Because he has probably not enough education to help him. So I'm going to ask his front left foot now to cross over the front of that. Up, I can go behind. I'm going to ask for him to finish it though. I'm going to ask for that for exactly what I actually want. I'm going to ask his hind feet to respond to cue also. So I'm going to ask his hind foot to cross under his belly. So there we have a little resistance. Just fine. I'm going to let him know that I'm trying to tell him something. So his hind left foot should cross under his belly before I'm satisfied. And I'm just going to wait until he follows some instructions. So he's got half of it now. And as you can tell by my legs, I'm not pushing him. I'm just waiting on him. I'm going to move with him so that the cue never gets taken off or changed. And then I just wait. Him backing up is not him doing anything wrong. Him backing up is him trying to get the answer. Him playing with his nose, trying to get the answer. He's not actually doing anything wrong. He's just trying to figure out what the answer is. And I'm giving him plenty of time, which I think might have been part of where his anxiety was built, was nobody ever gave him enough time. So then he decided, I'll just try 3,000 things. It's like when you have a cookie and your dog goes through its entire trick list, So he's probably been trying real hard to get the answer, and then nobody gave him the time to actually trust in himself. I'll do the other side also. So crossing his feet. Again, I'm not pushing him. I'm just going to wait on him I won't let him bring his head back, because that's half the process already. So he can't bring his head back. He's got to figure out what to do with his feet. It seems so elementary, but if you get the ABCs done, then you can have complete conversations. But if you don't ever do the ABCs, then they really don't have a fighting chance. Again, he's not doing anything wrong. He's just trying to find the answer. Even resisting, now he's got at least half of it. last session, usually they'll start yawning, and it's because you get in their head and you play with some things in their head, and they're like, oh my god, it was so intense. So I expect that he's going to yawn when I'm done with him. But don't walk. So now I'm going to install my don't go forward. So my wiggle has a lot of definitions, but they're never definitions that blur each other. So it's pay attention. It's excuse me, I'm trying to tell you something. It's back up. It's a downward transition from canter all the way down. It's a don't go forward, so it's still a transition. If he's going forward and I'm saying but don't, it's still a downward transition. So I'm going to introduce the wiggle, which I think I already introduced it, but I'm going to more thoroughly introduce it now. So going forward, if he comes forward, I'm going to say, oh, it should be uncomfortable to do the wrong thing. And I love that he's asking them questions. When they put both ears on you, they're asking you questions. And he's really intrigued by, oh my God, you speak my, and horses like him want to know you when you can talk their language. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do rhythmic stuff. So that way if you needed to have him move because you're coming in with, a lot of things in your hands and you need him to move, and you can just go like this and he's going to know that's a turn signal to move himself out of your way. I'm not going to make you wrong for that. I'm not, because I backed up. So that's a perfect example of a draw. So I backed up, I moved out of his space, and he crawled. He came back into my space. That's a draw. I'm inviting him in my direction. So I'm not going to make him wrong for having been drawn to me. Being very aware of how, like think about it now, being very aware of how you talk to your horse when you're not meaning to talk to him is very helpful. I'm going to ask him to do the same thing with his feet. I'm going to have this front foot cross over the other front foot, but this time I'm going to do it where I'm hoping I don't have to touch him. And so I call my turn signal. If I have to touch him, then I'm going to keep touching him until he does exactly what I asked for. Now, I think I've noticed the first time, I mean, they often do, but he actually likes to be told he did it right. So I'm going to go ahead and tell him again. Once I have to touch him, this doesn't change. This is like being in the back seat of the car with a sibling going, not touching you, can't get mad, not touching you, can't get mad, until he does what I want, and then the stimulus comes off. But I don't ever get any louder, I don't get any harder, I just annoy him until he wants to move out of that space. I can get as tall as he is. My goal, so if I was like to set goals in a first session with a horse, the goals I would set is, can I get him to move or at least acknowledge what I'm asking for before I actually have to touch him. So if I come in like this and he raises his head slightly and says, oh, or he moves his head slightly and says, oh, or he does that, then I'm happy with him. The goal is to not have to touch him, obviously. It's a distance exercise. So the other side, different eye, different horse. We all think horses can transfer the information, they actually don't. So for me, I always make sure that I teach it exactly the same as I taught it on the other side, as if I've never met this horse. He just got up from rolling, it's okay. He's allowed to do that. I get in his space and annoy him in his space so he can say, oh, you know what, I kind of prefer you get out of my space, or you know what, I'll just get out of yours. I don't take it up. I mean, if I sat here for maybe an hour, I might say, okay, I'll give you a little motivation, but for the most part, I don't take up any energy until they find the answer. If his head goes up, I just make sure I try to keep it from undoing what I'm already doing. If he takes a decent step to the left, I'm going to let him have it because he's kind of cross, but not really. Okay, you'll find it. You'll find it. You'll find it. So see, if they transferred information, I got him on the other side, you know, where he did it with just a suggestion. This time I'm like fully like, hello, are you there? So he's a perfect example of how they don't transfer information. Good job. Now if he were to walk forward, I would have wiggled the rope to let him know, but don't go forward. So that tells him, but don't go forward. Good job. I know, crazy. Okay, so the hindquarters, again, this is a draw. So anytime I back up, I want the horse to come with me. But anytime I back up and forget that I just backed up, I'm not going to make the horse wrong before I check myself. Did I do something? You know, instead of getting mad at them. So the hindquarters, I offer a cue of tipping my head. So that way at a long distance I can tip my head, like say if they're out on the lunge line or something, I could tip my head and tell them to turn the hindquarters away from me. And that's my cue, the visual cue for them. So I always install that at the time that I introduce them to the whole thing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slightly tip his nose. And then I'm going to tell his hindquarters, I'm going to ask him to hide his tail from me. So first I'm going to tip my head, he doesn't know what that means. And I'm going to put my support out here. I'm going to keep his nose, and I'm going to tell him to don't go forward. Tip my head, offer support, but don't go forward. Don't go forward. I want a full crossover this time. I don't feel I have to actually do anything with my support unless he was to think about doing something with that hind leg, but I don't think he was. I think he was asking what should I do with it. I know, you're doing great. Okay. So he's trying to block me a little bit with his head. So I'll just let him know that his head doesn't need to be a part of it. So just by giving him a little nudge to say, no, your head's not involved in this part. Okay. He doesn't know it on this side, but don't go forward. I think I told you guys last time, when I put my hand on their forehead, I want them to lower their head. It's natural for them too. It's kind of their way of saying, oh, thank God I did it right. Yes, yes. So he's trying to block me now, so I'm just going to let him know that, no, we're not doing that. I'm going to talk to your tail over here. You don't need to block me. So he's not getting the right answer, but I'm okay with that. I'm just going to help him a little bit, but don't go forward. But don't go forward. But don't go forward. But don't go forward. There you go. So, like, perfect example is that he tried 3 different things before he got the right answer. Patience is all he actually needs to, you know, have a goal or have an idea of what it's going to look like. Don't come in my space. And then kind of just focus on it happening that way, no matter what else he tries. Because that could be perceived as he's just not trying, you know, but it's not. He was trying really hard. He was just getting the wrong answer. So I'm going to ask him to back away from me now. His chest says I know it, so I'm not going to get after him for it, but I'm not going to say we're told to stop. So now, one of the things that we don't realize when we tell a horse to go out on a circle. I don't do mindless lunging. I think that's retarded. Not the right word, but I don't believe in just mindlessly telling your horse to run around. But I do things to make it interesting, and I do ask them to go out on a circle. So when we tell a horse to go left or right, often we think point this way or point this way. But truthfully, that brings your horse right to you. And then people get mad if the horse didn't go out on the circle. Like, what are you doing coming in here? You know. What I do is I give them direction by pointing as if I want him to look behind me. Because he has to follow his nose, and by following his nose, then his shoulder can follow. So if I get his nose pointed that way, and then I can talk to his shoulder, I can tell his shoulder to follow his nose. And then I always give them a go cue, because if I didn't want him to leave, I still should be able to point there, talk to his shoulder, and then not have him leave. He should be able to understand the difference. So this time I won't tell him to leave because I haven't introduced a go cue. So I'm going to point, like, I want you to look over there, and I'm going to tell his shoulder, I want your shoulder to follow where your nose should be looking, but I have access to his shoulder, so I'm just going to ask him to cross those front feet over. If he backs up, we're just going to say, no, that's not it, and I'm just going to back up with him until he figures there. Yep, follow me, follow. Good. Because I didn't tell him to go anywhere with his feet, I'm very, very happy that he didn't get worried and say, oh, I should be moving my feet. So that tells me a lot about his trust in you might actually be trying to tell me something. So this I'm not pulling on him, I'm just giving him a sense of direction and where to look. Good. Now I'm going to talk to his shoulder again. I'm telling his shoulder to follow where he just looked to. Good. And anytime I see that they're making any mental effort, I leave them alone and let them figure it out. I don't say, come on, you're not doing this fast enough. Well, that's like, giving a kid a times tables and then, expecting them to know how to do it and being mad at them for not getting the answer fast enough. I don't expect him to have answers to things he doesn't know. So I'm going to tell him to turn his head the other way now. So my finger should be what's telling him where to turn his head. So I'm going to put a little, so I'm not directly in front of him, so he's got a little more work to do than I did before. But I'm going to put a little focus on his nose to see if I can't talk to his nose to turn. Once his nose turns and exposes his shoulder to me, then I can talk to his shoulder. So right now I'm just going to say you might want to move your nose because this is getting a little bit closer. Good. And now I have his shoulder. And now I can talk to his shoulder. I'm going to talk to his shoulder as soon as he... That was hard for him. It's weird that the littlest things you can say are hard for him, but that was hard for him. I challenged him a little bit by being off to the side. Now I'm going to do a direct on and see if he's got a better idea what I want. Yep. Yep. By my going quiet. He does it, tells him that's all you needed to do. I'm not looking for him to overachieve, but if he had overachieved, I wouldn't have been mad at him. If he had left, I wouldn't have been mad at him. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give him a go cue. This is going to tell him I want him to leave. And I want him to do exactly the same thing, but now I want him to put some energy in his feet and leave. So now it's different. I'll go this way. So I still need him to start thinking about going that way before I give him a go cue. If I give him a go cue right now, obviously he's coming to me, and I don't want him to come to me. So he's blocked his shoulder only because he's focused on something else, but I'm not going to make him wrong for that. Yep, so he's got some thought to it, not a whole lot, but some. And a little bit more thought to it. Once I see it in his knee, then I'm going to give a kiss. Yep. So, perfect example. He didn't know I didn't want him to only go half a lap. He didn't know I wanted him to go for 20 minutes. I'm not going to make him wrong for asking me, was that enough? But a couple seconds ago, not even a full step was plenty. Yep. So he's got opinions about this. He just huffed at me. Good. Yep, you're right. Good. So that was a question. I call those thoughtful steps. He's asking me another question there. Asking me another question there. Nope. He got distracted by a bug. Good. So now the tail thing, I can tilt my head, give him a bump, say don't move your front feet, and move your tail.